Excellent.
I'm John Batchelor, johnbatchelorShow.com. Simon Constable, Dow Jones is here, and we're discussing too big to fail. In this evening's conversation, Citibank now facing doom, and General Motors now facing doom. Too big to fail. Is that still true given these conditions?
Well, I think it's different for each company. I think Citigroup is very big and very important to the financial sector. It's sort of at the heart of the banking system. And maybe they're not too big to fail, maybe they are, but I don't think anyone really wants to open that and say, oh, let's test this. Let's pull the pin out of this grenade and test it.
Right.
So I think they probably have to be saved at this stage, terrible as that may be. General Motors, I think, is a completely different story. They're a big manufacturing company that can't make cars that people want to buy and have consistently failed to do that in the right way. And, maybe they can be left to fail.
Now, General Motors made the argument, flying its jets to Washington last week, to plead for help from Washington, from congressmen who take the train to Washington. General Motors claims that if it goes under, and what that means is Chapter 7, Chapter 11, we're very vague about this, but if it fails, Ford's going with it, Chrysler's going with it, I think all of the parts companies go, UAW goes, the whole of Detroit, perhaps the lakes, everything.
Probably the whole of the Midwest.
Right.
And I think that would be true if failure meant closing up factories and all the suppliers not getting the orders they were used to getting, so glass manufacturers, paint manufacturers, everything, all the widgets that go into a car.
Right.
But I don't think anyone's really talking about that. I think what people talk about when they mean failure in this case is Chapter 11, a reorganization, and the possible sell-off of some parts of it to Japanese companies or Korean companies.
And offloading debt.
And sort of unwinding some of those UAW contracts. And if that happens, then I don't think the Midwest goes under at all. I don't think the U.S. economy goes under. I think it's actually very good, and then they can continue working.
Now, what was happening was that Citi was being attacked by the shorts and by everybody, being dumped. At the same time we were watching the talks in Washington, Citi is now the question mark.
Yeah.
Nearing an agreement, isn't done, bad bank, offload its bad assets, take all the bad sausage and put it into a bad bank. You say it can't be allowed to fail, but Simon, we spoke with John Tamny of Rookler Markets tonight, and he pointed out what seems to be obvious, that every time Paulson helps somebody, it gets worse.
It's like the kiss of death. It's like, what was the great phrase by somebody, if you see a man approaching you with a desire to really, really help you and do you good, run like mad.
Yes, run
well,
away,
if it's
right,
Hank Paulson and you're a bank, run like mad. It doesn't seem to help. One thing we do need here, though, is clarity about who is going to be helped and who isn't. And we need to know that definitively so that people can move on and say, well, I'll trade with this bank but not with this one. Right now, there's so much uncertainty that it's creating its own instability, and we just can't have that if we're going to have a real economy.
And absent confidence, there is no economy. John Tamny pointed us out that there's a bank in Texas that took no money and is doing just fine.
Yes.
Citibank, it might be, well, we'll see. Simon Constable of Dow Jones, I'm John Batchelor, johnbatchelorShow.com.